Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Part-Time Artist Podcast. Welcome back to episode 200. This is part 2 of my podcast with Joey Steele. I had to split it up because we got really deep, and it was awesome. It was everything that I hoped it would be. I hope you tuned into the last episode. If you didn't, just pause this right now. Shoot back over to part 1. Every part of this episode, and there will be a part 3, which will be the final conclusion. Every part of this episode, it just got deeper, more vulnerable, and it was just really awesome. It truly is the best podcast that I've ever done, and I really hope that you guys take your time. If you have a road trip coming up this summer, hopefully it's not today, because man, it is a scorcher going on right now, but I really do hope you give yourself the time to go through this, maybe at the gym or something. And speaking of gym, I do have a referral code for Planet Fitness if you're looking to get in shape this summer, get in that beach body mode. Of course, here in Philadelphia, if you're a teenager, you can get a free Planet Fitness membership with planetfitness.com/summerpass. But if you're an adult like me, you can click the link that I have in the description and you can sign up for $1. Another thing that I found out about before we jump into the show and I start talking about this stuff, another thing I found out about is I have a code in there for Visible, and that's the cell phone plan I use. And I just found out that if you link the Visible plan to Verizon Home Internet, you get $15 off of your home internet plan a month. So not only is Visible a great cell phone plan to have, you'll get a cheaper internet plan with it. All right, and click the link in the description for Visible. You'll get $20 off. I think maybe a free month. We both get a free month, and then you'll get cheaper internet if you use Verizon. But of course, the coolest and best way to support the show is to just show some love. Subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Spotify or any of that other stuff, write a cool review, like the video. I think you can subscribe on Spotify and all those other ways. Just do things to show love. That's pretty much it. Find me on Instagram, share the link. That's pretty much what it's all about. And that's kind of what this episode is all about. It's a lot about a community. It's a lot about building perspective and sharing different perspectives for one another. Joey is a dude that wants to institute change, and he does that by way of music. And we learn in this episode that he wasn't always into music. He was someone that was into religion and other types of things. So it's really cool to see how, maybe we have these characters and we have them in this sort of box. And then through conversations and stuff, we see that, the box that we put this person in is all wrong. There's so much more depth to it, and there's so much more depth to people in general. So this podcast is really eye-opening in that way. I realize I never addressed why I have the microphone here. This is an homage to me going on Joey's show, which was called Dispatches from the Underground. And I was on a bunch of episodes, but I found out recently, check this out, that the show, the first podcast that I was on with Joey was episode 268, and that aired June 17th, 2015. Okay, and you can find it online. Maybe I'll put a link to it. But the first part of episode 200 came out June 16th, 2025. I kid you not, I had no idea until after I posted it, but almost to the exact day, 10 years apart. I was on Joey's podcast, and Joey was on mine. Woo! Tough one. So, really cool synchronistic events going on, and things like that come up. I use that as affirmation to know that I'm on the right path. And when you find these weird type of synchronistic moments, how do you process it? I don't know. I process it a little bit more spiritually. And again, that's something Joey and I talk about in this episode. But yeah, I think this is just an affirmation that we are on the right path. And like I said, this microphone, this is what Joey would hand me. He would hand me his backup microphone, his backup Shure SM58, and he would take his stage microphone, of course, band stickers all over it. So yeah, this was just a real homage to that. Also, before we jump into this episode, just want to acknowledge Camp Punksylvania was awesome. We got some fresh ones here. So many. I just want to also acknowledge the people that came up to me and the people I talked about. Camp Punksylvania, it really grew a lot this year from last year, which was awesome. It really is like a family reunion at this point. There's the people that you've seen year after year, and then there's new people, and then there's the people that they bring into the family. They call it a cult. Maybe it's definitely a cult, but I look at it as more of like a family gathering, and it's really awesome how that all came together. And I also saw Joey on Sunday, which was another great thing to like come together on. So there's just a lot, and as you can tell, I'm still recovering. My voice is still recovering. My body is still recovering. I am tired as shit from that weekend, but I do want to get these next few parts out there. Don't want to keep you waiting. So yeah, once again, there's 3 parts to episode 200. This is part 2. Go on and listen to part 1 if you haven't already, and stay tuned for part 3. Without further ado, let's jump into the show. I want to talk a little bit about where you came from with Dispatches from the Underground, which was, your program, basically, your platform that you built. And I was lucky enough to have not 1, not 2, but 3 appearances. If you want to go back and look at a very young and bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Roger talking to Joey, where the script was flipped a little bit. There's episode 274, 282, and 366. Okay, now this is episode 200, so this just goes to show you where Joey was at in terms of how much shit you were putting out.
I forgot I did that many podcasts. God damn.
Oh, it went. I think we got into the 500s with you. I'm not too sure. But
oh my God.
I want to talk about some things that I've learned. I want to talk about 3 profound things that have stuck with me from the different things that you've done. But first, from the podcast, one of the founding principles from the Dispatches from the Underground podcast, and it was really the first time that I heard this word spoken in this way, was your podcast was about gaining perspective. And this is a word that you probably said in every episode at some point, right?
Sorry, yeah.
It's hard to ignore. It's hard to ignore that word if you're listening to Joey Steele's podcast. But this was a word that kind of echoed in me, especially just being like a kid in their 20s or whatever. And it sent me on this path to, it feels like when this is like a word, and when you and when you start to get, let's say, awakened to wanting to gain perspective, it's something that you start to seek out more and more from other people, from other things, from traveling. Like, it starts to become addicting in a way. Like, I want to gain more perspective from other people. Can you talk to us about what got you on that path to gaining perspective, and what and sort of where it took you?
That's an interesting question. No one's ever asked me about that. I've been picked on for that word multiple times by people who I truly love. They would always be like, "Oh, there it is. Talk about some perspective, Joey." But no, I think I don't know where I first started using that concept from, because I came from the activist world and got down with communism and Maoism, and that's not a word that we really use in that tradition. Like, that's where a lot of my training was. So I'm not really sure why that word became something that I was into. I was also a history and religion major in college, so a lot of my training on those fronts was dealing with some perspective. And like, when I was sort of getting trained in these things, relativism and deconstructionism were like things people were dealing with. So maybe some of it came from that, like, confronting those schools of thought. But for me, perspective, it was just a natural, organic place to go to, because I believe in consciousness. Mm-hmm. And I believe in empowerment. And I think that there's a nexus point of those two things at perspective. Like, like when we are coming at things from a certain place, everyone has their own experiences. Everyone has their own sort of litany of where their consciousness is coming from and has come from. And I think it's important to appreciate the fact that you're both right and wrong at the same time. You know, I don't think I'm wrong. I also fucking know I'm wrong. You know, like, I know I'm right in how I live, what I think I should do, but I also truly, deeply, deeply, deeply respect some other people who very much disagrees with me. My partner in life, Christine, her and I disagree on just about everything, but I have.
Shout out to Christine. Honestly, how many years has it been now, by the way?
We first met. We didn't start dating when we first met, but it's 20 years ago. So I think we've been together for like 17 years or something like that, off and on at times. But
it's New York years, by the way. So it's really like 45, like, adjusted for inflation. Yeah, go ahead.
That's funny. That's good. Yeah, but like, I don't agree. I don't even always agree with my own thoughts.
Yes,
right? Like,
dude.
I don't know.
Oh man, I love that, dude.
So, and our thoughts change, but
yeah,
I respect the perspective that my partner comes from so deeply, and I understand it, and I think I get it, and I listen to it, and I hear it, and I disagree with it, and all of the things bring me closer to her. But none of it ever makes me feel like, oh, you're dumb. Like, I never think that.
Right.
You know, and even with people I don't respect, even with people on the street who I think are putting out backward thoughts, I don't think I try to. Actually, All Torn Up has a new song that we haven't released yet that hasn't been recorded called Shit Brains. And part of the song is about my struggle with not thinking people are stupid. Like, I think I say it all the time. I'll be in New York. I'm like, fucking honking the horn. Are you stupid? I'm like, God, they're not stupid. Like,
yeah,
it's a different place they're coming from. It's not it's just a different, their perspective is focused on something else. And so because they're looking at that and they're not thinking about something else, their perspective is flawed or ignorant or short-sighted or problematic or backward, or they're looking in a certain way. You know, thinking about how people look at things, it helps me stay positive. It helps me appreciate the complexity of people. And so truly trying to listen to people's perspective and acknowledge them and appreciate them when I agree with them, when I disagree with them.
Right.
whether they're on my side or whether they're not. It makes me appreciate them as humans. It makes me appreciate them and learn from them, even when I disagree with them. It empowers me to be myself and to appreciate them as themselves without like condescension or patronizing bullshit. It's a freeing word. It's a freeing thought, actually, to me. People talk about how heavy leftist thinking is sometimes, and I'm like, truly loving and appreciating the differences in perspectives. It's freeing to me. In some ways, the American ideology doesn't get it because they talk about free, like free speech. And I just think it's so petty and stupid. Like, okay, you can say what you want. No one's going to listen to you, but you can say what you want. But like acknowledging different perspectives and valuing them because they're different, even if you think they're fucking wrong, is empowering to you and to them and to everybody else. I'm not, I think in some ways I came to that concept unintentionally. And in just like how I lived as a communist to like, as a communist, we would go as a street organizer, we would go and organize in people's homes. And so we'd be working with folks they had read the books that intellectuals had read, and they hadn't had the experiences that other empowered, privileged people had led. And I never was trained to or thought to think less of them because they didn't have the same experiences as me. And I learned from those experiences so deeply, so much more than any book I'd ever read, that I could, and I have a tattoo on my arm that's from Mao. It says, you can take the good style, leave the bad. Like, that's just part of the perspective. Like, truly, truly appreciating human beings for how they see the world as differently than you, and understanding it and valuing it, even though you think it's fucking wrong.
Yeah. I have something to admit, and this is actually, I'm a little, I feel like I'm in confessional right now. This was something, Joey, this was something that I had to, like, I was on the phone with my therapist and I was just like pacing about this. Okay. So this is a real situation that happened to me, and I haven't told too many people about this, but, on May 31st in Philly here, we had West Philly Porch Fest, which is a big DIY community event. And oh man, I'm embarrassed about this, but I'm going to share this because I feel like it's really relevant, and I actually want to also know your thoughts on this. On this same day,
thank you for sharing it.
This is me being vulnerable. We talked about being vulnerable, right? I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. The same day as West Philly Porch Fest was an event called Life Surge here at the stadium, which is the most capitalist place. The stadium where the Flyers play and the Sixers play here. And the Life Surge event, I'm getting choked up here.
Life surge?
Life surge, like to surge your life like a surge protector.
Terrible name.
It's a terrible name. Yeah. It's a Christian event. Okay, it sounds
like this, yeah.
So this is so they had a bunch of Eagles, Philly Eagles players. That was the draw to get people in the door. They gave people a free lunch, and there was like a whole bunch of like businessmen, real estate agents, like mentors, and all this stuff. And for some reason, I just felt like there was something calling me to this event. Now, on paper, I even requested to be a volunteer at West Philly Porch Fest, and I got the information, and I was going to be on paper, that's where I would be. You know what I mean? But there was something that was telling me that there was some perspective that I could get from this event. And
great.
It was, but I gotta tell you, man, I was fucking scared because one of the speakers was actually Trump's first White House press secretary, like Kayleigh McEnany. I don't even know her name. She was awful, by the way. But I was so like at a crossroads because I was like, I feel like there's perspective. I feel like there's things I can learn from this, even though I don't call myself a Christian. All this stuff. And I ended up talking to my therapist about it. And she was just like, you really have to go with your gut on this. And I ended up going to that event because it was just something that I wouldn't go to, and I did see one Trump hat. I was scared because I was like, I thought I was going behind enemy lines here. I thought I was going to see backwards people, but it was, it was really diverse, and the whole idea behind the event was training people of Christian faith to become more wealthy, to become more empowered in themselves, and to expand the kingdom of the word. Which, you take it however you want to take it, but I feel like in terms of perspective, I've gotten to a place, but I was a kid and I grew up kind of in the church, and then I ended up being like, one of those fuck religion, fuck the government, fuck. But now, like, I'm coming to this place where I'm like, religion helps a lot of people who have lost hope. And also the government helps a lot of people that can't support themselves, So I'm getting to this place of perspective where it's like I went to that event hoping that I could learn things to bring back to my community. It might not be expanding the word of the Lord, but it might be learning things that are of the perspective of religion that can be applied to like empowering each other in a mentorship type of way, in having faith in yourself and believing in yourself as a person, and and all that type of stuff. So I guess I just wanted to I guess I'm admitting this on the air that instead of going to West Philly Porch Fest, where I probably should have been, I ended up paying money to go to a Christian event to hang out with. And there was a couple people that were like, got into the whole, like, you got to know who your enemy is and, like that type of shit. And I was just like, get the fuck out of here. But then there was a lot of people, and one of them that I really loved was John C. Maxwell, who is an author and mentor, and ironically, they gave those guys less time, which is the people who I wanted to talk to. But I guess my question for you is, what is your idea of, I guess, with the context of perspective, how do you feel about learning from people like that maybe you don't agree with, but like you can take some of these principles, like nothing makes money like the fucking church. So take some of these principles and being like, how can I use this to empower my community, if that makes sense? I don't know if I'm making sense or not, but how do you feel about this situation?
I think you did. Well, I think first, I'm sorry you feel that was difficult for you to admit to, because I hate the fact that we've gotten to a place in the left or with conscious people or with punks or whatever that we have to feel ashamed for doing something that we think is righteous or good, like that we're going to face some sort of backlash or condescension. It's like, I think that thinking just all makes us worse people. And, like, you have a thought that you were thinking, you spent time reflecting on it, you went and did the thing. I think you should feel good about all of that. I don't think people, I think if we're being intentional and conscious and going at things with like the people of the world in our hearts, cool, like great, like it's not for personal betterment or selfishness, but it's actually for justice or whatever. That's all we can do, So sorry about that, but I was a religion major. I was a religion major in college. I was a religion and history and education, but I was a triple major. But religion was my passion. If I didn't make music, I would be a religion professor. That's really what I love. I love
Why?
the study of religion. I think
what made you choose that?
When I went to college, with this concept of wanting social change in my heart, I went as a philosophy major, and then on day one, I quit philosophy because I realized the only thing that philosophy is going to do as a major is going to prove that I know nothing. And I'm like, I'm not interested in it. I'm interested in making change.
Right.
So I stepped back and I said, who in this world that we live in do I look at as people who've made righteous change? Right.
Oh my God, the same thing. Oh my God, I had the same type of conversation with myself. That's so interesting. Go on. Sorry.
And so I look at John Brown, right? So I think John Brown is a person who I admired as a person of privilege who did not have to do what he did, and what made him make change. He was a crazy fucking Christian fundamentalist. Like, the dude was bonkers, really screwy, really, really crazy. And then you look at like Second Great Awakening or the abolitionist movement against slavery, when people were like, slavery is wrong. Who stood up against slavery? It was Christian fundamentalists who did, because they had a moral belief against it. And there was a whole lot of other really wretched shit that they would be talking at the same time. They were also deeply rooted misogynists. They came at a lot of this stuff with patronizing bullshit. It's like, there's a whole lot of problematic shit involved in this. But when I was first thinking about people I admired who were resisting, I looked at religious people, and I really came to Malcolm X, who, every single All Torn Up pressing we've ever done, every single release we've ever done has always had snippets of Malcolm X on it, because I think Malcolm X is probably the greatest human being ever born on the soil of this country, or one of them. And I think his story, not only his righteous ideas on oppression, but also his journey of confronting things in his own life and the scientific process of making change in himself and around the people around him, is just a beautiful story. And I think he's a great example of kind of people we should be. He was not good despite his religion. He was good in part because of his religious convictions. And I think it's important for people of conscience to value people for who they are, not despite who they are. So, I think a lot of people probably look at me and they're like, oh, I like Joey, but not as communist bullshit. I'm like, my communist bullshit is who I am. So, you could not like it, and that's fine, but that's who I am. So you like me because I am a communist, and you don't like parts of the communism. That's fine. And I love Malcolm X because he's religious, and in part I hate a bunch of the other shit he did and said. So, again, to that perspective issue we were talking about. So,
I want to interrupt you for 1 second, because I said there were 3 profound things that have stuck with me, and we started with perspective. The next thing was Malcolm X, because you were the first person that really shined a light on Malcolm X in a way where I was just like, I don't really know anything about this fucking guy. And it was one of those moments where we were having a conversation about making change and activism and how violence is just necessary in that. Like, it's just a natural part of changing things, especially in America. And that really resonated with me bought his autobiography, read the thing cover to cover. It was so eye-opening to me. And watching the movie with Denzel, it took me a few tries, because it's such a damn long movie and I kept falling asleep. but it was just like, that was another big part of. I gotta be honest with you. After reading Malcolm X, I was considering, should I think about converting to Islam? It was so powerful in that way, and the way he used religion to really turn his life around and to really step into his power. And I think that was also a big part of my decision to go to this event. And I just wanted to. It's just amazing to me that we got to that point before I even asked the question. But go on. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, well, you did a good job of constructing me to get there, because if talking about religion, I'm always going to go to Malcolm if we're talking about religion and social change. But, there are shortcomings to that journey of me, understanding that as well, which is there is no God. So, that was always a problem for me. I was a committed atheist in high school. I would go to religious groups in high school when I was 16 and bust them up and like I read the Bible front to back when I was 16, and I would take the Bible and I'd be like, have you fucking ignorant, privileged white pieces of shit read this wretched book filled with horrible oppression that has been used to justify the most brutal oppression in the history of the world? Have you read this fucking book?
Yeah.
And I was a committed atheist from very early on, and it was very painful for me to appreciate the fact that the best people I knew of in history at the time were religious. And I think there's a reason for it, and it's taken me a long time. I'm not a young man anymore. It's taken me a long time to come full circle and understand why I appreciate religion and the role it changes in lives. People talk about Karl Marx's quote all the time: religion is the opiate of the masses, but they don't finish the sentence. The sentence finishes with, it's also the heart of a heartless world. Okay, so it is a place where compassion and understanding and empowerment in a world of pain and suffering,
Right.
is seen as a good thing. And also doing the right thing in a world where you're almost certainly not going to get anything for yourself. What is going to keep someone to do the right thing? For 30,000 years, the best answer we had was, after you die, you're going to go fry. And so it is
true.
It is a painful reality.
Don't get on the naughty list.
We need to do the right thing. So what is it that causes us to do the right thing, even though we know we will suffer for it?
Yeah.
Personally, we will not make money, unlike the Life Surge folks are talking about. You're not going to make money doing the right thing. It's never going to make you money. In fact, in a world marked by oppression, it will almost certainly bury you.
Yeah.
As it did Malcolm, as it did John Brown, as it does anybody else who is a person of consciousness, as it will do all of us who are protesting ICE right now. Our lives are getting ruined because of these things. And it is a righteous way to live. I think of a million examples of this in my life and in popular culture. It slips in all the time. There's a million ways this happened, but for me, a story that I come back to all the time that I think about, and I sadly can't remember the man's name who was involved in the story, even though I worked with him for years. I used to be a street activist in Cleveland, and I would do anti-police work, and we worked with an organization called Black on Black, which was an organization in East Cleveland that did very righteous work confronting oppression committed against the Black community in East Cleveland. And they had a storefront that was like a community center. And so we would go there all the time and do work with folks. And I was playing chess with an elderly man who was a committed activist at Black on Black. And we were talking, and for years I just like the guy. I just always thought he fucking hated me. And so we were playing chess, and I really liked him. I really enjoyed him. He was very curmudgeonly and challenging, but he was also full of life and resistance. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how we ended up talking about it, but he's sort of like, I like you, Joey. And I'm like, oh, that's surprising. Thought you hated me. So, but that's like I like you, Joey, and I like the group you're with, but I don't know what your fucking problem, your people's problem is with religion. Like, why you got to bring your atheist bullshit into our community? Like, no, we don't want to hear your atheist bullshit.
Mm.
And I was like, I heard that, and I heard him saying that to me, and I felt like he was asking me a direct question of like why we have to do it. And I talked about how, for me, atheism is what propelled me on my journey to consciousness. I wouldn't be atheism was the first thing that I got. Atheism was what made me appreciate the world and environmentalism and other people in my life. And it helped me lose weight, and it helped me get healthy, and it helped me become conscious. Atheism to me was my bedrock. Like, I built my entire other outlook on atheism. So I thought that was something everybody else needed. So I would go hard. I was very militant about atheism.
I can
We would go
imagine. Yeah.
to we would go to mega church events and proselytize atheism outside of them. It was scary and dangerous and awesome. So like, I got a million crazy stories on that front. But this dude, he asked me this, and I was telling him some of these things, and he goes, "Yeah, but what you don't get, Joey, is that this is his words, not mine. Black people, we have nothing."
Mm.
And as a young activist, I interjected, "I think I get that." And he's like, "No, you don't. Because if you did, you wouldn't be trying to take away our what we do have, which is God."
Right.
And we had a long conversation about that. And I sat on that concept for years and thought about it and reflected on it and wrote about it and talked about it with him and other people. And it took me a long time to realize the complexity of that statement. And it's filled with lots of things that I don't think we have time to talk about all of it. But
sure, yeah.
I didn't appreciate that. I didn't appreciate, and I think I do now, and I think I have in my relationships with other religious people since then. But this is this part of like this perspective journey, like hearing his words from him and appreciating that I haven't been through his experiences. And same thing with drug use for me. I'm sober. It is an integral part of who I am. It is a bedrock concept for me. It is absolutely essential to my human reality. And atheism and sobriety to me are two parts of the same picture. And these are things that help. Drugs and gods help people limp through their oppression instead of confronting it.
Mm-hmm.
To me,
cope with it. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it was about limping through, but yeah, coping is reality. And I'm like, I just came to the reality of one day, years later, after talking to this friend from Black on Black, this comrade, thinking like, why am I trying to slap the crutches off of people who are limping through life? Why am I trying to kick the crutch? If I think they're limping through their oppression, why am I trying to kick their crutches out? Like, hey, walk, motherfucker. Like, it's so stupid. Like, I want to empower people. Religion does that. I think it's wrong. I think it's dangerous. I think it's ill-conceived. I think it will lead us to places where we're easily manipulated. But I see a lot of wonderful people doing great work because they're motivated by religion. Who fucking cares? Like, they are making the world a better place. Maybe not in the way I would, but who gives a shit if it's in the way you would or I would or they would? Like, the most righteous people I can think of in the world, some of them were religious. And that concept, by the way, like, that was the beginning of my journey, seeing Malcolm X and John Brown. Like, then I found out about atheists who make the world a better place, like Mao and communism, and that's how I ended up getting down with some of these things, or like even not like communist leaders who are controversial. Like, I'm sure people hear I'm a Maoist and they get upset, and I have all these things they want to say about that, and I understand that. But there are other people who are communists that people don't think of as communists that have made the world a better place, including the Black Panther Party, Huey Newton. These were atheists. These were not religious figures. These were committed atheists. Including like Robert F. Williams, which is a figure a lot of people don't know in the civil rights movement. Robert F. Williams he wrote a book called Negroes with Guns, and that book really changed my life when I first learned about Robert F. Williams. And these were Black atheists in the civil rights movement. These are people who preceded. Robert F. Williams preceded in some ways. He was in Deacons for Self-Defense, but like in some ways he preceded Martin Luther King. Although it's complicated. But so like I learned, I went deeper into understanding the people who really made changes that I wanted to make in the world.
Yes.
And I realized that you don't need to be religious to do those things, but some people are, and that's fine. They have different perspectives, and they're empowering people, and they're helping people, and they are also disempowering people in some other ways, and that's okay. Like, we don't have to agree on everything. Like,
Yeah.
I look at it and I just think, I was literally talking about this with Scott from the Bridge City Sinners, a bass player from the Bridge City Sinners, like a couple of days ago. We were talking about this in depth and had like a 4-hour conversation about the complexity of religion in our lives. Because he's had a very tumultuous relationship with religion as well.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that you went to that event. I guess it's a long digression, but I appreciate that you went to that event. I think it's good for people to seek out light, to put it in the religious sense, where they see it shining. I'm glad that you could looked into Malcolm X and saw the wisdom he had to share with you. I think everybody should. That's why I put Malcolm X on every album, even though it's complicated and confusing for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I will be vulnerable with you as well. I also am glad that you didn't get down with Islam, because, I think it is a misguided direction in terms of consciousness. I think it is also, again, one of the issues I have with religion is, and also you can see this with Malcolm X, you are becoming susceptible to manipulation.
Yeah,
We're
to
all susceptible
control.
to manipulation.
There's a lot of control.
We're all susceptible to manipulation, even beyond control. I'm a communist. I believe in control. I don't have a problem with that. But you are you're putting an a priori limit on what your consciousness can and cannot engage. Malcolm was able to work through that. I think he was a special person, but I don't think a lot of other people can work through that. So I think it is dangerous to get down with fundamentalism religions and religions in general. So I think I hope people get down with atheism. I think it is necessary, but I don't think it's I think it's important. Maybe necessary is not the word. I think it is empowering at the most basic level, but people can find power in other ways. And given your experiences, if you need to deal with that oppression with something that helps keep you on that path, righteous as fuck. And I don't want to kick out crutches. I don't want to see them as crutches. I mean, it's complicated for me because I can't really stop seeing them as crutches. So that's like a limitation in my perspective. But I try to be truly, truly, truly respectful of righteous religious people who are trying to confront oppression, which is the gauge I use to decide whether someone who's religious is righteous or not. Are they confronting oppression?
Mm-hmm.
The light people aren't. Fuck them.
This segue is right into the next thing that I wanted to bring up, of the other profound thing that came out of your mouth that stuck with me. But
I want to say I appreciate you bringing that up. It makes me feel really good. It brought tears to my eyes hearing you talk about how you learned about Malcolm X through things that I did. That makes me feel really, really good, and I'm tearing up talking about it. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I live right now in Northeast Philadelphia, which is insanely diverse. I'm telling you, I'm going into schools now, and half of the kids are Muslim. We have hall passes for prayer during Ramadan. There's kids from Brazil, kids from I'm doing my Duolingo Spanish, not because I want to be Spanish or anything. I want to be able to communicate with kids as a teacher, so, and all of these things came from different perspectives. And I think that I'm just so blessed to have that in my community right now, and in this type of way where I'm learning all types of stuff from these kids. But, there was a long while where I got to be honest with you too. It took me years to read the book. It took me years, man, because I'm not good. I'm finally getting better at reading, but I was always, as a kid, that was my weakness, was reading. But in terms of religion, the last thing I kind of want to put...
Again, I'm sorry. I have to cut you off again. I'm so sorry, Roger. Please tell me to shut the... It's your podcast. You can tell me to shut the fuck up. But like you said this is a very complicated... This is why I would actually love to be a religion professor, because I love talking about this stuff. It really is, I think, it's a deeply rooted passion for me, because I believe in morality. And I've even talked with a reverend friend of mine about doing a religion podcast, a morality podcast, because I love these concepts and I love these topics so much.
Yeah.
But you said something that is exactly the point that there's so many other points that I would love to talk about, but you actually said, I feel so blessed to be in this situation. And I think that that's sort of exactly both the positive and negative of what I'm talking about. Like, I think it's good for people. I'll just talk about the negative real quick. To not realize and appreciate the work that you've done, the shedding of privilege and entitlement in order to come to that place, to be in that school, the commitment to listening to people of different orientations and backgrounds and ideas that it takes to do that, isn't because of some religious figure has brought that into your life. It's because you have committed to a method of hard-ass work and reflection and self-criticism and move forward. So, like, I appreciate the fact that you think you're blessed at that, and I don't think that you're cool. I'm glad that you feel that that's a positive thing for you. And that word sometimes sneaks into my mind to how I feel for the community that I have and people I love. But I also have to realize that you have given up tremendous to be in that position. You could be doing something else. And it's not through luck or religious divine intervention. It's because of the work that you've committed and the life you've led and the choices you've made that you're with them. So, I think it's important for us to appreciate the good and the bad that have brought us to the place we're in. And so, I'm sure you're doing all that, but that word, that, and lucky too, for in other ways, it diminishes your struggles to me. And that's what religion does as well, I think. Positively, there's a positive side to it, but it diminishes our struggles and it diminishes the work that I think other religious people do. Like, I see people, Malcolm, I can't talk about Malcolm X, but like, other people I know who do religious work or who do good works, to think about the idea that they're doing it because it's the Lord work and the Lord speaks to them. I'm like, it diminishes you. It diminishes how much you've done to go to that place and the work you're doing and the person you are to others and as a human being. I'm like, it's fine if they think that and that's what drives them, fuck me, whatever. But I will always be like trying to do everything I can to shine a light, again, with the terminology that they would use, on the fact that I don't want you to diminish the commitment that you've put into doing that and think that it was God speaking through you, because you chose those things. No other being did.
I think when we get to this type of place, this is just, and you've studied this with religion, so I'm sure you know this, but like, this is just, I feel like sometimes it's a point of semantics, where it's a point of, like, in terms of perspective, like how we're phrasing certain things and what the phrasing represents. But like my perspective on religion is, like, I've volunteered in food shelters. I've seen, like, I've been in Sunday schools. I've been in youth groups. Like, to be honest, religion has always represented a very positive thing in my life growing up, even though I never was subscribed to, like, I got to be honest with you, okay? When I was a kid and I'm going to church every Sunday and they were like, God's always watching, Santa Claus is always watching, I would I thought I was in like the Truman Show or like The Office, and there were some times where I would just look at some things and I would pretend it was like a hidden camera and God was watching me, and I would just be like, "Are you fucking serious? Is this really happening to me?" Right?
Yeah.
Like I was talking directly to the motherfucker, because I was so paranoid, all the time as a kid. But at the same time, it like. My first best friend that I ever had from moving from Philadelphia to New York City, which was scary as fuck. Like, my first best friend I met through the church, So I think connecting this to what we said about social media, like, I think this is kind of like this is kind of a tool, but a dangerous one, and like. I'm not gonna sit here and fight in a holy war. You know what I mean? Like, I think religion is susceptible to humans being human. Like we were talking about, being hypocrites and being, judgmental and all these things. Religion is no exception. The way people use it, especially here in America, and even Malcolm X, the way Malcolm X looked at, black folks that were going to church instead of hopping on board with Islam. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but it's like there were still things, fundamentally that are kind of like gray areas. But like I said, by going to that event, it was like I wanted, and that was what my therapist said, like, focus on what you want to take away from this. What do you want to take away? Because there's something inside of you that feels like you could take something away. And how we defined what that is, whether it's intuition, whether it's, the Holy Spirit, whether, like, these are all, like, words, constructs, like you said before, like, there is no God. I could kind of take the same logic and sort of say, well, all of us are God. Like, each of us in our own way is a God, which is like, I listen to people, more spiritual people like Wayne Dyer, who again wanted to like empower people, but he did it through a more spiritual. And it's funny because this is another thing that I wanted to get to later, talking about spirituality a little bit. But I just kind of wanted to end on this note where I just feel like, I don't know, maybe it's me getting soft in my old age and being, but like I feel like there is something with religion, there is a perspective that we can take from it in order to empower. Now, whether it's a small thing or a big thing, or you're going to take the book of Genesis or whatever, the way people are using religion to arm themselves against the LGBTQ community and to arm themselves against, women's rights and all that stuff, like, that's always going to be backwards bullshit. If those backwards, if they weren't using religion, they would probably be using something else to arm, you know what I mean? That line of thinking.
Well, I mean, partly religion is what it is because America has done a phenomenal job at disarming any theory, political theory, and communism. I mean, literally murdering most of the communists in the world, the communist organizations, leaving a vacuum for religious organizations to fill in the void in those places. But like, this is gonna. I think that we're onto something. I think that this is going to continue to assert itself. I think this is going to be one of the definitive issues of our time, and it has already become some of that. Like, younger people, younger than us, sorry, Roger, I'm putting you in my group, younger people who are looking for
getting there
meaning, and they're never going to find it in capitalism. It's never going to give them a meaning. So, I think that meaning is inherently whatever we give it. So religion offers an opportunity for those people to fill that meaning with a very pre-programmed, easily insertable, easily digestible platform. And that's because, in part, I think religion, the powers that be, capitalists or whatever, maybe not consciously, I'm not saying it's a conspiracy theory, but I think the powers that be see that religion is ultimately something that is very manipulatable, and they can use it to redial things in. So it's less of a threat to them than other meaning filled orientations, perspectives, outlooks, methods, ideas, whatever, however you want to call it.
I would also say though that capitalism, I don't think that's a war they want to wage, because religion is older than capitalism, and I think that that's a fight that they're like, this transcends borders, this is something that I don't think capitalists really even want to take that on, and I think that that's why the right has politicized it so much,
Yeah, maybe they just even can't, because they were able to stomp out communism by literally murdering the communists and destabilizing the ideas and the outlook and changing the history and the lies and blah blah blah. But religion is deeper and further back than them. So yeah, it's definitely complicated. I do think I'm probably reducing this to some level. My point is to say, I think our folks and younger, this will become a constantly asserted issue that we will need to be confronting. And I think a truly empowering, conscious atheist morality is complicated and confusing, and a truly empowered, conscious communist morality is confusing. Yeah. And I think a lot of folks are going to look to capitalism in the next 10 years and be like, we need a theocratic answer of some sort. We need a religious revival. We need a religious reawakening. We need a new religious outlook. I think it's on the precipice of that. I think it is going to be dangerous and volatile. And again, capitalism will always turn the things into the opposite. So righteous, good young people who are looking for empowerment through Malcolm X and through John Brown and through other righteous religious figures who have come about, they are going to get down with it on that level, but they're going to be able to be turned and dialed into where they need to be. So I think this issue that we're touching on is endlessly engageable and complicated and extremely pressing for our time.
Yeah.
Extremely pressing for our time in a way that I don't think actually almost anybody on earth is talking about. I think this is actually a thing that I think about almost every day, and I think is very complicated and confusing, and I wish there was a way to deal with it. I don't have an answer. I mean, again, I've thought about doing this morality podcast with a preacher friend of mine, a reverend friend of mine, but
I would love to see that, bro. Bring me on, dude. I'll do one too. Yeah. I got a lot to say. I got a lot. But I think
thank you for letting me digress it some more.
No, I love it, and it connects right with the next thing that I heard you talk about. So the three profound things were, first, perspective and the value of gaining more perspective. Second was just Malcolm X and looking into figures that have embarked on great change within this country. And again, there's always more to learn with that. There's always names that I don't fucking know. And
me too.
Yeah. But that goes hand in hand with perspective again. And then the last thing, more recently, was when you got on stage with Cop Out, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but you said something along the lines of, now my memory is getting hazy because I'm like, maybe it was Al that said this. But I'm going to say on stage.
You're going to have to cut that out so that Al doesn't hear that, because I can't have Al being
taking credit.
You just got to. Yeah.
Okay.
Al's never gonna let that down now. It probably was Al, but yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure it was you, but now I'm starting to doubt my memory a little bit. But we got on, Cop Out got on stage, and you said something at the Yuki Club, and you said something along the lines of yeah, I know we're all here for a fun music show, but what we're really doing here is community building, and what music really is community building. And then, obviously in Joey Steele fashion, we went on and on. And no, I'm just kidding. But the quote,
Al would definitely agree with that.
but that just totally shifted my idea of what I was doing as a person. And again, talking about searching for meaning as young people, what could we do and stuff like that. And And when I thought about building community and the ways that we can do that, I think this also comes back to what we were talking about when we talk about connecting with people that we don't agree with, trying to show people to the light. I think it comes, and even with the perspective of religion, I think these are things that people can find common ground on in a way where that's what builds community, is finding common ground. You know what I mean? Like there's no, like even when you think of community and common ground, they're spelled a similar way. So even when you're talking to backwards Trump people, I think even through the lens of finding some common ground with those people, if there is any, I feel like that's kind of the angle that we can take to shift perspectives on people, is starting out on common ground and then kind of working our way out in a way. So my question for you is, again, when did this idea of community building through music start from you? And was there somebody that kind of blew your mind with that, like you blew mine?
Oh, I appreciate that you heard me in that, because it is something that, I'm not sure who said it at that show, because Al and I both are on the same page of that so much. It probably was me because I talk too much more, and Al would agree with that. But it's something that Al and I consciously built Cop Out around. It's something that we talk about constantly at every show because we believe in it, and it's the reason Al and I are together as a band, because we found it in the work that we did building Punk Island for 10 years. So I think Al would appreciate that. It doesn't matter who said it. It is something that is central to both of us, and in different ways. I think Al would have a very different answer. Al from Cop Out would have a very different answer to this question. I think community has meant something different for him as a person, and as a trans person, as a punk, as all these things. Community has meant something different to him than it has meant to me. And the sort of privilege I have in sort of like being able to choose and engage in my community on whatever footing I want. It's complicated, but I think would be interesting to hear his perspective on all of that, as well as it might be similar or different than mine. But it is something that I think is very important to me. I know when I started doing this, to me, it was very clear. I have always been passionate about music. And in high school, I found a community of people. We weren't particularly political. I was sort of getting there. I was really passionate about confronting, I was a hardcore pacifist in high school. And I was also a hardcore anti-nationalist in high school. I was an internationalist, I called myself. And so I was those things, but I was also kind of a Democrat. I was like really passionate about, I got politicized in the mid-90s when the Rwandan genocide first happened. And that's at the time for me was really like what spun my head around in realizing there's just a million things on that front. But
right.
While I was political, I had friends. I just like these people who I went to high school with, who I love, like with my whole heart. And I still think of them as some of my best friends. Some of them I still see all the time. I love them with my whole heart. And none of us agree on anything, but it was music that tied us together. Music and like some other cultural happenings that were all kind of passionate with. But it was music that like brought us together. It was like the love of the Misfits, or like going to shows, or like we just listened to the music and sang the words and had shitty ass bands and wrote songs that were so dumb. And like that relationship was so important, transformative, and like empowering and stupid to me. Like it was all those things, but it was genuine. It was like, it wasn't contrived. It wasn't like, all right, we're a fucking community now. It's just fucking my people who I could rely on and love. And I've never lost sight of that. I don't think they even know how much that moved me and how much that was for me. through and as a community organizer, I mean, I was a community organizer for after high school. I went to college and I became a community organizer in lots of different ways. And I would always be organizing communities in different conscious, intentional, political ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it was contentious and great and and controversial and painful and loving, and it was like all these things. But like, it was also a bit contrived. It was also a bit inorganic. You know, like I would be going somewhere and doing something in order to create community, and it wasn't disingenuous. It was always genuine,
Mm-hmm.
and but it wasn't. It was contrived. It was fabricated in some way. It wasn't organic. It truly wasn't organic. So um, when I stopped doing more street activism, I was thrown out of the political party that I was in. I committed my life to a political party at a point and became an organizer with them and got moved to New York. That's how I came to New York, is I got moved here by
Wow.
them. Uh, I did not want to leave Cleveland, where I was from, because I had community there,
Sure.
and I was moved here. I had no choice, and they threw me out. I lost my home. I lost my friends. I lost my community. I lost my support system. I lost literally everything I had when I got thrown out. Literally, I couldn't get a bank account. I had no money. I had given literally my entire life. I've given up to be in this group, and my freedom. I had a terrible criminal. I have a terrible criminal record because of that work, and I lost all that community in one foul swoop. And I was like, you know what? This isn't the way it needed to be. Like, I'm going to be me. I'm going to have my perspective. I'm going to go out and do the things I want to do in this world. I'm going to find joy doing the things I love. And I'm going to find people who I love doing it with. And I'm going to still build community. But it's not going to be inorganic. It's going to be organic and true and genuine. And that was punk. That was me
Yeah.
finding the guys in All Torn Up, and
Wow.
then finding a community of people at the lake and the swamp, which is where we did a lot of our shows, and
Yeah.
finding them. It was a largely Latino punk scene who let me come into their space and be with them, despite the fact that I was not of the same ideology. I was a communist coming into an anarchist space that was run by Latinos in New York City, and they welcomed me with open arms and were nothing but loving to me and supportive. And I tried to be the same and tried to organically build community with these people I loved. My training in inorganic organizing has, in some ways, gotten in the way of that at times. Um, but and I think I'm still shaking a lot of that stuff off from my mind.
Mm.
But you know, to me, life is really about community organizing, and
Yeah.
it's about people. To me, life is about people. Like, my partner and I go places, and she's always like, "Where do you want to go?" And I'm like, "I don't really care about seeing things. I travel the world all the time. I don't really care. All I really care about is meeting people
Mm.
and talking to people and hearing from them and disagreeing with them and having fun with them. And that's what music is about to me. I don't always love the bands I play with or the music they make, but I love the punk community, and I love that it's genuine and true and organic. And I think we don't appreciate that enough because of all the conflict, like the challenges we have as like a diaspora, in some ways, like a disjointed diaspora who share a
Mm-hmm.
common community. But we have true values that we have been unconscious for so long. However, we still espouse them so deeply in our actions. And I love the punk community that I've had such a privilege of being part of
Mm-hmm.
and organizing and giving what I could to and failing and letting down and all these other things. Like, I love that I gave my life to this true, genuine. I tried to be truly genuine or organic community organizing. And I wish we just did it more. It doesn't have to be sad and painful or protesting. It just has to be genuine and true and joyful and complicated and empathetic and loving and confrontational against oppressive contradictions and all these other things. But like, there was no person, there was no ideas that I read, there was no being that told me to do these things. It never came from someone else. I mean, there were community organizers who I looked to and saw the community organizing, but not with punk. Like, I don't think we've ever really gotten it. And so this is truly like what we did at Punk Island, what I did at Punk Island, what Al did at Punk Island.
Yeah.
We took over an organization that was not ours, much like this world we inhabit. and we made it our own with seeking out truly different perspectives and that we deeply disagreed with. I did not agree with almost anybody I worked in with Punk Island. I think some of them are nice people, but some of them are fucking idiots. And I stood by them and organized with them because I believe that diversity and perspectives, different perspectives, if they have a common plateau, is a righteous way to build community. And that the community, if pushed along in the right place, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be very imperfect. It's going to need guidance. I wish some other forces in the punk community would stand up and provide more righteous guidance. But community is gonna emerge. It's just like, hopefully it's on a footing that's righteous. And I think the punk stuff is what I would like to do more. I mean, that's what I'd like to do. I'd be fine just sailing off into the sunset doing that, you know, just with a community of people who were trying to live righteous lives together. That's all it is. Yeah.
I think as kids, like we were talking about before, search for meaning, and as social media becomes this giant thing, I think the need for real connection is becoming more and more important. As we shake off the COVID shit, and we're going to have to shake off this administration, there's going to be a lot of healing that is going to need to happen, and this is always going to be a thing. And I go back to where I am now in my community of Northeast Philadelphia. Like, I fucking love it here. You know, like if you gave me like $1 million or the keys to a mansion anywhere, I would be like, sell that shit so I can move back to Philly, you know, because the only thing that I really want to do in this place, and this is why I gravitated towards teaching, was and especially substitute teaching, because, you know, frankly, every story that I've heard from a fellow teacher is they always had to deal with bureaucratic bullshit coming from the Department of Education or whatever, but that's a whole separate discussion. I'm sure you have some stories about that we don't have to get into, but what I love about substitute teaching is, like, they don't expect shit from me. I go in there and I teach deep breathing. I teach conflict mediation. I teach having fun. You know, like, I really have the freedom to impact the community and the youth in a way where it's like, I remember what it was like to be a kid. I remember what it was like to not feel like I had a community. And, you know, and the more I walk around Northeast Philly and I see kids that, you know, or kids rather see me outside of the classroom, in the classroom, it's like that, to me, that feeling when kids are coming up to me and they're like, let's play soccer or whatever, and there I am, you know, connecting with my community in that way, it has awakened me to the point where it's like, this is the fucking meaning. Not to get philosophical, but I do feel like from that moment where you guys were on stage and you were talking about community building, like, to get a little bit religious or spiritual, it felt like that put me on a course where I just started attracting breadcrumbs that kept leading me to that realization. And it's why I got my first tattoo here for Punk Island, because that community, like, I was in tears. Summer camp forever. Shout out to Punk Island.
Yeah.
And this was my first tattoo ever, and I just felt like this is my people, this is my community, and it's just like that is the most important thing in the world. And I think the more that we can get, the more that we can use all of these tools, you know, and try to figure it out, whether it's religion or music or social media or whatever, like the point is to have real connections with real people and to empower each other in real ways. To me, that is what the purpose of life is. To me, like, fundamentally, that's what brings me joy. And I started out in music, I did podcasts, I did all this shit, but now I'm getting to this place where it's like, I want to get into mentorship. I want to do, like, that's the purpose of the YouTube channels and the shit that I'm trying to do. And I just wanted to recognize that it all started from that moment of you and Al and the pamphlets that I got from your merch table and that type of shit.
Oh, well, that makes me feel really good. Sometimes doing this work, it does feel futile and irrelevant, and like, you know, like they said, you screaming at a wall. So
Yeah.
it feels good to hear that the words that we've said have helped to make your life better and give you purpose that is a righteous purpose in some way, led you on a path to find that. That feels great. I will say, like, you're mentioning the substitute teaching stuff. I find that so interesting. I would love to hear more about that, because your perspective on it is so different from my perspective on it. And this is another part of the perspective conversation that I missed. Like, hearing different perspectives gives us an opportunity. People think when you share these different perspectives, that like, they take their whole identities and they wrap it up into them. And people should, like, one thing about having perspective is you should have one. Like, you know, like, you should seek out others, but you should imbibe one. You should embody a perspective. Like, you should have an outlook. Like, you shouldn't diminish yourself. We shouldn't just like take up somebody else's. You should have one. And like, hearing your perspective on that gives me an opportunity to challenge my own thoughts and change my perspective or deepen it and disagree with you. Like, it's always a constant reaffirmation or a new opportunity to change my perspective, which I find invigorating and I find revitalizing in a lot of ways. Like, always hearing how other people are right or wrong is just feels so good to me. Even when it makes me feel like I'm wrong, I'm like, oh, cool.
Learning.
I can change.
Yeah.
I can change. That's not what we're talking about, but I wanted to appreciate how much that made you saying that made me think that thought. And we didn't talk about it before in perspective thing, but yeah, I mean, life is about other people. You know, it's hard to realize that, you know, Jean-Paul Sartre said, like, hell is other people. That was like his existential realization of what hell was as an atheist. And I just think he's exactly wrong. I saw a little clip of Zizek the other day talking about how much he hates other people. And I'm just like, you know, sometimes we let our ideas, our intellectual abundance and intellectualisms, like, get a hold of us and take us down these really awful paths. And they get in the way of us truly experiencing what it means to be human. And I think emotion, like experiencing emotions, you know, something that AI is never going to get, no matter how much we program it, and challenging our logics and changing and developing and growing, and also like developing connections, true, genuine connections, superficial connections, momentary connections. Like, this is what it means to be human. And this is something that so many of these philosophers, they get stuck in their thoughts. And I felt that way at times too. And I understand the comfort that thinking can give you, like, because dealing with other people can feel uncomfortable in so many ways because it challenges your perspective. There's a billion ways where dealing with people can make you feel uncomfortable or awkward or uncool or whatever. but like finding confidence in our perspective and immersing ourselves in a community that truly appreciates us on some level. And that's what the human experience feels like it's supposed to be about. And doesn't always feel good. Like, I don't actually think anybody on earth understands who I am. And that's a sad realization for me, as someone who's committed to community. I think a lot of times people see me as a caricature, or they boil my thinking down to like snippets, which a lot of people do, but it's painful for me because I truly try to appreciate and hear people for who they are. And I feel like capitalism has trained everyone else to do that so much. And I don't think anyone actually knows me. So it does feel very good to hear that you have in part like heard some of the things that I've said as part of your community and taken them to heart. That makes me feel really good. I really appreciate that. It's very meaningful to me. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for, I feel really proud and really appreciative to have you in my life, that you would do that. That's, I think I still don't feel like anybody, just to have people appreciate who you are truly, even just for a moment, I think is special.
It's huge. Yeah.
But I will share a memory of you. I think the first time I met you. Do you remember the first time we met?
I remember briefly getting the all torn up sticker at the merch table of the Misfits show.
That's right. That's the first time we met. Do you remember talking?
I remember talking, but I just remember being just so nervous that it was like I was in fight or flight mode. So I don't remember what was being said at all.
Well, that was a Misfits show, 2009, I think it was, actually.
Irving Plaza.
So almost 17 years, something like that.
Oh my God, dude.
About the same time I got together with my partner, actually around the same time. I think it was a little after that, but you found me after the show also as we were loading out.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and you asked me, "Hey, I like this punk stuff, and I liked what you said." You confronted me, so I want to you apply. I remember that. I remember this. I remember meeting you at this time.
It's coming back to me now a little bit.
Do you remember what you said to me?
Oh God, no. I remember you said something about Jerry only finding your CD maybe randomly.
Yeah, he did. That's good memory. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you asked me at the time. You said, "How do I?" I think did you have a band then? I don't think you did have a band, but like I think you asked me like, "How do I get involved in this more?" And I was a little bit dismissive. I heard you, but I think we were actually like loading out at the time or something like that. I was a little bit dismissive, but I still talked to you, and I was like, "There's a simple way to do that, and it's just go to shows." It's just go to shows. There's no way to get around it. Like you wanted to get into more community stuff. And you're like, what do I do? And I'm like, just go to shows, talk to people, meet people. I was relatively new to New York at the time. I had moved to New York in like 2004, but I hadn't only been in the punk scene in New York because I was doing political work outside of the punk scene. I'd only really been deeply immersed in the punk scene since like 2008, only about a year or so before we met. And all of the connections that I had made because I went to punk shows and I just talked to people and I just met them and I was just like, I had genuine community building things. So I think I was a bit dismissive of what you were asking me, but I do think the advice that I gave or the suggestion that I gave is still something that we all need to do, which is just go out and talk to people with different perspectives and get down with them and create community and just go do it. Because there's no, It's uncomfortable. It's awkward. It's unpleasant a lot of the time, but it is life affirming, and it is
real.
Doesn't always feel good. It real. It's real. It's organic. It's genuine. It's genuine. Be yourself. Be your flawed, crazy self, and let them make you better or make you worse or whatever. Just be with them, you know.
And then the next time,
I do remember that.
And the next time I saw you after that was outside of the Grand Victory. I was going to a show, and there you were handing out flyers, and I'm like, "Oh my God, you're the dude!" And then I was just like, "How come you're not fucking famous? What are you doing here? You opened up for the Misfits."
Yeah, that's funny. Maybe I am confusing the two times. Maybe that was the second time is maybe the time you asked me that. Maybe, but because they were both outside that I remember talking to you. But maybe if we only talked to the Misfits inside, then maybe I'm putting those two thoughts together. But yeah, okay. So early on in our first meetings, so you did it. I mean, you went to the Grand Victory and you were there at the show, and that's really all it is.
That was my first like DIY Brooklyn punk show. Was Mischief Brew, Absinthe Rose, and Brooke Pridemore. I'll always remember that as my first show at the Grand Victory, and there you were handing out flyers outside, and from then on it was like shit. It's like from then on it's history, you know.
That was a good show, man. Absinthe Rose, Kimbo. Oh man, what a great fucking band. I mean, Mischief Brew. Obviously, Eric Pierce is dead now, and that's so sad. And like, but Brooke Pridemore is still playing. Everybody. So Absinthe Rose was a Boston band, and Kimbo is here in Portland. I should holler at Kimbo. Incredible musician. But Brooke Pridemore. I just went to Brooke Pridemore's show in the basement of the Unruly Collective. Like.
Road dog, that guy. He is a road dog.
Yeah. Hardcore homie, dude. I got some horrible stories about Brooke Pridemore shows for another day.
Oh, God. Let's not get into it. Let's jump into our second tune here, which is another Joey Steele project. This one's by the name of BOWHEAD. This song is called Shallow Mouth. Check it out.